Okay. Rachel, welcome. I've been wanting to chat to you for a while. I'm going to link some of your previous podcasts so that people get your backstory, as we were just talking about. Like, you have told the story a lot of times. I think it's of great value, and I think people should really check into your story, because not only is it something that really, I think, fascinates people for better or for worse, but it gives some context to what you talk about today with regards to your work as a psychic and also your current projects with the ley lines, which I want to talk about today because I think that's super fascinating. So we'll link those in the description. But first of all, welcome. Thank you very much for joining. I know we chatted a couple of times before, but very much looking forward to this. Before we start, though, I just wanted you to introduce yourself quickly and then just let us know what you've been up to most recently. And then I've got heaps of questions for you.
Cool. Thanks, Tom. Well, thank you for having me on. So people might know me. I'm an SRA survivor, and I've been speaking about that for a long time in interviews for about 5 years. And as you said, I've gone over those details many, many times. I've had some positive feedback lately. After 18 years of lobbying the government, I finally got a victim of crime payment for the abuse that I suffered. So that's, it's nice to be able to sort of not put it aside as such. I still need to speak about those things for the children that are still going through it now. But my real passion is ley lines, teaching people how to use their psychic ability. It's there are abilities that people have that are latent because, there's all these different ways of suppressing people's psychic ability. Religion, and I'm not bagging religion, I'm just saying that, a lot of religions try and take that from the individual and give it to someone within the religion so that they don't have their own communication with God or with their higher selves or their spirit guides or whatever. And I want to give that back to people. So that's what I try to do with what I, with the readings and the courses that I teach. And my other great passion is getting out in nature and realizing that nature speaks to us. So ley lines are, everywhere. There's incredible spaces where the ley lines cross. They create vortexes and portal spaces. And they're interdimensional spaces. So you can actually see otherworldly entities and have, communications with through the Akashic record. I mean, it's just the most amazing experiences that you can have. And you can do that, just about everywhere. There's a ley line in at least one ley line in every square kilometre on the face of the earth. So that's my true passion. That's what I really love to talk about. So it's good to not have to rehash where I've been again.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So cool. So there's a few things you mentioned that we will go into in some more detail. But just to start with, you mentioned that it's like the psychic ability is something that's somewhat latent, but everybody has it. There's arguments as to whether certain people are, like not really in this realm with imagination, which I think is a precursor to psychic ability. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I just think some people just don't have it. But we're just talking about, especially people that would listen to this, there's a lot of latent abilities in, let's say, all people. So first of all, I just wanted to ask, is it something that every child is born with? And you mentioned that it's indoctrinated or like programmed out of people, but is this something that everybody essentially has? And therefore also do animals have these abilities too, like dogs and cats and birds and what have you?
So most children have some sort of psychic ability. The interesting thing that happens, which won't be happening for too much longer, around about the age of 5, the veil, so it's like a block comes over that stops us from remembering our past lives, remembering where we've been, who we really are on a soul level, that we're infinite souls that have, many, many incarnations. And that we have these abilities. So, little children that speak about seeing things in the closet, scary things under the bed, they probably are seeing those things because they're still psychically open. But around the age of 5, it sort of kind of gets shut off. A lot of children then become really psychic again. If they're a high enough soul frequency, they'll become psychic again in adolescence, which is where you often get a lot of poltergeist activity. There's a great book called Poltergeist by a guy called Harry Price, very old book. And he did a lot of studies on this, and most of the poltergeist activities that you get in homes are actually, there's usually an adolescent female, often adolescent males as well, but mostly adolescent females in the house when the activity occurs. So there's a correlation. So most children are psychically open. It does seem to shut off. What's really interesting now is that the veil that we've all lived with is disintegrating rapidly. I feel that this has something to do, and I've heard other psychics talk about this as well, and astrologers, it has something to do with the harmonization of the ley lines that's occurring at the end of this year. So for people who are not familiar with that, the equinoxes and solstices are the times, it's 4 times a year, where the ley lines would normally harmonize for a short period of time. It used to be hours, then it was a 2 or 3 days either side of specific dates, 21st of March, 21st of June, September, December. It then sort of reverberated out to about 45 days either side. And now we're coming up to, it's going to be permanent. Like, we're not going to have to wait for these solstices and equinoxes for these harmony times to come in. We're literally coming into this permanent harmony time of the ley lines, which is such an incredibly significant event. I'm surprised not more people are speaking about how amazing this is. So the veil disintegrating seems to be coming along with that. And that is also what we've been noticing in the last 4 years with everybody, well, a lot of people waking up to governmental overreach and many other things that, those that are waking up recognize now that, we're living in a very different world to what we may have expected or thought we were living in, say, 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about this. It's going to be happening in December this year, right? Or is it next year?
This year.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. You're going to be speaking at the Cosmic Consciousness Festival at that time. That's kind of like, that's pretty awesome, right?
I would say that was divinely organised. And it's really interesting because I really wanted to go in June. And then I realised, because I went in 2000, but I went with a friend and he drove us and he organised it all. And I don't know where I was off with the ferries or something. I didn't pay attention to how far it was to drive. And when I realised again, oh my God, it's that distance from Adelaide. It's a hell of a trek. So I just sort of thought, oh, well, I won't go. I'll try and go at the end of the year. And then I got actually invited up. So again, perfect timing. I didn't know in June around that time when I was trying to get it organised that we were coming up to permanent harmony time in December either. I had no idea. I only learned about that watching an interview with Pam Gregory and a gentleman, a geobiologist called Rory Duff. I had no idea. So, yeah, it's just perfect timing. I'm chuffed.
Yeah, I think for you it's going to be huge. But I'd like to talk a little bit about that later because there's I have some questions around that too, which I think would be good to explore. But just first of all, when we're talking about psychic abilities, Rachel, I think it's important to define the terms that we're talking about because I think everything has its own construct or its own entity. Like you say the word psychic and then people have created like an egregore around what psychic actually is or means. And a lot of people think it's like telling the future. So if somebody's a psychic, they could like tell you about the lottery or tell you about like when you're going to die or when this is going to happen or when the next whatever's going to happen. But I think that the nature of psychic abilities, because it's innate to, let's say, especially for like, good souls, it's innate to everybody. So when we're talking about psychic ability, and it can be heightened as it happened through your experiences as well. But what do you actually define that as? Is it future telling? Is it higher state awareness? Is it access to spirit guides or angels? Like what exactly are we talking about with psychic medium abilities?
So we come down to the absolute nitty gritty of it. It's whether or not your third eye is open and your crown chakra is open. So people with an open third eye can see otherworldly entities. They might hear them also. So the third eye is the pineal gland is functional. So we have chakras throughout the body, and each chakra governs certain aspects of the physical body and the ability to. I mean, we're multidimensional beings. We have portals in our chakras basically, and each chakra allows you to connect with a different dimension. So once you get up to being able to operate and open up the third eye chakra, which by the way, if you have a lot of fluoride in your system, your pineal gland won't work properly, so you won't have that happen. But you can clear it. It just takes a little while. So if the third eye is open, the third eye chakra is open, and the crown chakra is actually the access to future events. So you can have someone who's got a open third eye, but they can't see the future. Once the crown chakra opens, you can also, where it's fully operational, then you can see the future as well. And there are so many different areas of psychic ability. So some people walk around and they can feel a ley line. I don't have that. I don't feel them. I can see them. Some people can see the future, but they don't pick up on otherworldly entities. So not every psychic can do all of those things, but there's a whole gamut of things. So you've got clairvoyance, where you can see the future, clairaudience, where you can hear otherworldly entities, clairsentience, where you can pick up on things, energies and things, precognition, like I said, being able to see the future, remote viewing. So a lot of psychics can see at a distance. And, original peoples across the world have been able to do this for millennia. It's not really that big a deal, but people seem to think, well, I think it's because people get frightened that they might be spied on, but it is a thing, so you can see from a distance where somebody is. If somebody's missing, you can find them, missing objects, those sorts of things. Astral traveling is a part of being psychic. So again, those who don't have a high enough soul frequency usually can't exit the body and go off on these travels. And I mean, I could talk for hours, Ben, Tom, on what this is. So, yeah.
I know. It's just a lot of people have
yeah.
Well, a lot of people will put it into like the woo category, like it's airy fairy or new age stuff. So I just think it's important that when people are wanting to explore this, to know that it's not just like a lot of people have a negative connotation towards what it is, and sometimes based on their experiences and with like psychics and especially like online stuff, it's obviously one of those things that has been. It's very easy to take advantage of lost and vulnerable people if somebody professes to being that. But it's interesting that, because one thing I wanted to talk about is outsourcing, because, like we all have it, but then other people have it to a higher degree. And sometimes to see the forest for the trees, or sometimes getting that external perspective is really positive. But then there's that where people just kind of outsource everything. And I wanted to ask you, as somebody who does it professionally, can you just define where there's the positive use of it, and then where it can be a little bit outsourcing, and in the outsourcing, can it actually disempower one's own abilities to access their higher consciousness? As you just said, it could be many different facets of psychic ability.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning that, because it drives me out the wall. And I've heard some horror stories lately. So some people who have psychic ability are so desperate for people to believe in the ability that they have, and it's a bit of an ego thing, I think. They'll just tell them anything that comes in, whether it's ethical or not. So you've got to be really careful who you go to. Also, you shouldn't get regular readings. Once every 6 months is more than enough. You don't need to see a psychic more often than that, unless you've got some really severe issues going on. And, say you're being psychically attacked or something, there might be other reasons why you might want to do it. But if you're having a reasonably happy life, things are going well, you don't need to be tapping into somebody else's outsourced opinion of what's going to happen for you. And it's not always the best thing to know what's coming up in the future all the time. It can be beneficial if you're in a difficult situation, but if not, it's probably not the best idea. So, the ethics of it, I get very frustrated with other people in my profession, because they will tell people things just because they want to be right. And they'll tell them the worst things. And it's a bit like if you go to a doctor, if you've got a cancer diagnosis, they'll give you a prognosis of how long you've got to live. That is evil, in my opinion. Just like faith can heal, faith in a doctor can kill too. So you've got to go to someone that you believe is ethical. And this is the thing, you always go with your gut feeling. Your gut feeling is one of your best psychic tools, no matter whether you can see the future or anything else. If your gut tells you that somebody that you are getting a reading from hasn't got your best interests at heart, don't listen to what they're saying, or cut the conversation off and just don't be part of it. So, yeah, I mean, it's like anything. You can get unethical people in every area. But outsourcing is not necessarily a good thing. And if you want to learn how to use your abilities, you have to trust them to a degree. So like you were saying before with imagination, when you start to use your pineal gland well, and you start to pick up on information from the ether, from the Akashic, it can be as simple as watching a game show. And there might be questions coming up in the game show, and you'll just have the answer just come into your head. Got no prior knowledge of that. You don't even know where the information's come from. If that happens for you, then look it up. See where you might have picked it up somewhere, but not realised it. But that is actually a really good way to test it. I mean, these game shows are pretty sad, but it's a good way to test whether or not you've got those abilities. If you do really well in multiple answer questions, if you know what I mean, in school and stuff, you might have some sort of ability, psychic ability, because you can pick out the answer even though you don't know what the answer is. So, you know, there are the little ways that you can test it. It's an interesting thing because a lot of people just don't trust what's coming through.
Yeah,
It's
I think that's
the
one of the
trust.
big things, right? Is connecting, because there's the head level, there's the heart level, and there's the gut level. And I think a lot of people are disconnected in that, you know, in that lineage. So
Yeah.
just on that, Rachel, like you've had your experiences, which are obviously like, you know, a lot more than what most people could even imagine. But what in my experience, I've noticed that people who have opened up the higher aspects of themselves, it's come through a loss of something, and that loss could either be like, you know, a deep trauma, it could be like a loss of a loved one, it could be loss of health, it could be something along those lines. Like you've got your framework of what's like real or the real world or what life is, and then something happens that shifts them out of that. Like that happened to me. From what I can tell, you know, like although we're all, let's say we're all born with a certain degree of it, it seems to be opened up by something along those lines, a sacrifice, a loss, or something like that. Is that your experience, or is it more just that you can actually still develop it? Obviously you can, but naturally does it come through a positive acquisition, or have you seen that it often comes from like the sacrifice or loss of something?
Unfortunately, yes, I do see that a lot. And I'd always like to make it very clear, I do not advocate for trauma in any way. I don't, there's absolutely, the ways that I was opened up were absolutely totally unethical, and I would never, ever say that that should be done to any child. And unfortunately, some of these acts are actually, you know, written into the law for the Freemasons and the Luciferians. But trauma seems to open people up for some reason. I'm not 100% sure why. You see countless people who talk about near-death experiences and suddenly their psychic ability comes in. So we are, like I said, multidimensional beings. We have access to all the dimensions through our chakras. So a shock to the system can sometimes take the veil away. I don't know why that works, but it just does. Also, if you've come in for a particular experience in a lifetime that's supposed to wake you up, that'll be part of your soul contract, so to speak. Having said that, soul contracts are also disintegrating at the moment. So, and I'm now that I know that the ley lines are coming into harmony time, that kind of makes sense to me now. It didn't make sense to me for the last 3 to 4 years that I've had this coming through for clients. I couldn't quite work it out. So karmic ties are also balancing out and nullifying. So there's a lot going on at the moment. A lot of people are feeling quite lost as a result. Yeah, it's a very interesting time to be alive.
Yeah, super interesting. But I think, you know, maybe that is part of like, in order to reach a harmonic state, there has to be a collective unrest or something. Like, you know, like you said, you've experienced, a lot of people have had the loss or the sacrifice. I think I think the big benefit of the whole last 4 years of scams was that I've seen these for like 20 plus years. Like that's why I called it, and I made the video and all that in 2020, because I've seen all the swine flu. I've seen like 5 or 6 more, because they happen every 3-4 years, of the pandemics in different kinds, but they're isolated. It's like, here's one in like Zambia, or here's one
Yeah.
in like, you know, Russia, and here's one in China, but never did it just go like, here's every country, right? Like it was a plane wide thing. So I'm like, is that the precursor of the trauma? That whether you believe it's real or whether you know it's fake, but your life got thrown into disarray, was that the precursor to the harmony where, like you're saying, we're heading to at the end of this year? Do you think that might be part of it?
I think so. What I think is going on is when you've got a whole lot of soul contracts ending and karmic connections ending all at once, you're going to have a lot of chaos, a lot of really interesting things going on. So I am not advocating for any of the scamming crap that we've all gone through either, but I'm just saying it seems that it's all kind of coincided. So what I actually think was going on was that, you know, the control structure that has been in place for quite some time, those that have that control structure knew that it was going to disintegrate, and they were terrified. And so they've tried to set things up that's actually been of benefit to us, because it's woken a lot of people up at the same time that we needed to all wake up. So again, you know, it's really interesting that the most powerful psychics that I know, and I know quite a few, have had the most traumatic experiences in childhood, or the most intense losses, or, you know, shocks to the system. So I'm not advocating for it again, but it just seems to go hand in hand.
Yeah, you wouldn't purposely do it. You wouldn't like have a child and go, you know what would be great is if my little son or daughter could have more psychic abilities, so I'll like throw them in this. What you wouldn't do that, but it just seems to happen that our something to do with what life wants for us. Like we come into a certain dynamic or family environment, or like whatever happens, like vaccines, even like you don't really have a choice in that. From a like from one perspective, from another perspective you do, but like when you're young, so then that can open you up to certain things, and I think that's how it's meant to be with that side. I was just wondering though, when we're talking about this before we shift topics, how do you recommend? You mentioned go with your gut, right? But I just
Yeah.
want to give an example here because there are very famous psychics, for example, and a lot of people really do outsource and they buy into things, but their gut's really telling them it's right. The example I'm going to give is the medical medium, because a lot of people know of medical medium. And when I first read the book, I did that because I had somebody who knew what I did because of a holistic health practitioner. They're like, can you please read this? This is like my go-to. It's like my everything. I think this is the answer. She was in a wheelchair and all that sort of stuff. And from the very first like paragraph, I was just getting like the heebie-jeebies. I'm like, there's something really wrong with this. And then I'm reading the whole thing and I'm just like, this is like way off. This is not, I'm not even a psychic. And I'm like, I know this is way off. But then like, as my knowledge grew, I'm like, I can explain it all and whatever. But then there are people whose gut tells them that this is like the absolute amazing thing. Now, my question really is around A, how do you discern? And B, how do you know, even if you are a channel for something, how do you know where the messages are coming from? Because I can make an argument that with a medical medium, he is a medium. But what I would suggest is that the medium that he is channeling is like a supremely negative energy harvesting
Wow.
entity of some kind. So how does one discern if they are receiving messages, where that's coming from? And B, if you are taking the advice from somebody or reading their book or hiring somebody or whatever, how do you discern that what they are channeling is of a benevolent nature?
So if the gut doesn't tell the person, then it can be, and I love what you're asking before that as well, and I will address it. If someone, so this is one of the other things, we come to Earth for a dualistic experience. So we come here to experience both bad and good, dark and light. That's what being on Earth is like. It's like being in primary school and high school. You're going through all these really intense experiences so that you can get to a higher and higher soul frequency. So if that person is supposed to be led down the garden path to learn a lesson, they'll get led down the garden path, unfortunately. But hopefully they'll wake up at some point and learn the lesson. With regards to those who channel entities, my thing would be very wary of any entity that really like love bombs you or feeds into your ego or makes you feel like you are the only one who can do that work. If you're getting those sorts of messages, that is something dark. If that entity is jealous, if they're saying that they're the only entity that you can communicate with. This is what frustrates me about people tell me that Jesus Christ was a jealous God. Absolute rubbish. That's demonic. So anything that you hear like that is you're dealing with something dark. They might present in the nicest possible way, but if anything that feeds into your ego is not good.
Cool.
There are billions of people on the earth and every single one of them could be a really good medium and channel through the right kind of message. No one's special when it comes to that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. That really works for a lot of levels. And then just really quickly though, before I switch topics, just when you mentioned that some forms of the psychic medium is you can see the future, is there one future? Because I can quite often put two people who can read things very well, and I know they can because I can you just know, but they're giving two different representations of the future. So is that just because it's unique to each individual and what they're channeling is unique to the individual hearing the message? Because sometimes they're saying it's the future, like in the future, this will happen as in blanket for everybody. So I'm just wondering how people come to those kinds of outcomes.
Yeah, so when you get a reading from somebody, it's never 100%. No medium is 100% accurate. I've never come across one that's 100% accurate. You'd be very lucky if you get one that's 70 to 80% accurate. So there's always leeway for either they're not getting the message through properly or, you're really not supposed to know everything that's coming up. So you'll get a flavour for what's coming up, but not the whole picture, because there's no point being here. If we knew everything that was going to come up for us, there's absolutely no point in existing. So, it can be a double-edged sword. So there's also, if you go to a good medium, you're basically having a conversation with your spirit guides and your higher self through that person, through that intermediary, like a glorified radio. So you'll be given what you need to know for your highest good if you are communicating with those benevolent, loving entities that want the best for you. They'll give you what you need to know so that you can aim or be inspired to go for a particular outcome. It doesn't mean you're going to actually do the work to go for that outcome. So that's also part of it. People want to go to a medium and find out what's going to happen for them and not do any of the work involved, which is, frustrating.
Yeah, I bet that must annoy the crap out of you.
So,
yeah.
When I set up to read for people or to teach people, I always ask for whatever information comes through me to be for that individual's highest good. And that is what you should be working from. It doesn't always mean it's going to be handed on a platter.
Yeah, even if it's tough love and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we'll talk.
But having said
when
that,
we
if
get
anybody's giving you negative information, be very wary as well, because negative information in a reading is not appropriate.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a whole other side. I know you've got your course on developing your psychic abilities. We'll go through that sort of stuff at the end where we can link to what you do. Next topic I wanted to touch on, those heterochromia. So Summer and I really only became aware of this through you. It's something that I actually became aware of more than 20 years ago, because a famous actor through when I was growing up was Kate Bosworth. She was in a movie called Blue Crush. And then, anyone that was in the surfing world and that at that time when we were teenagers, it was like, whoa, she's got two different colored eyes. And then there was all these rumors where that meant that somebody's bipolar and et cetera, et cetera. But I became aware of it then, but had no idea what it actually meant. But then since coming across your work, and then Summer was telling me more about it because she has heterochromia, I just wanted to touch on this topic because I think it's super fascinating. So as a backstory, recently I interviewed Steve Falconer, who he's got so much great information on like a lot of, what this realm's really about. But he was talking about in his presentation, he was talking about the idolization of the blue eyes and how the Nazis really wanted to study it, how it's come from like an Aryan or, like a past civilization of superiority and things like that. And that they're depicted in so many different paintings through different cultures and idolized, et cetera, et cetera. But then it's like, but isn't heterochromia that's actually what you would say is if you want to use the word in context, superior? Because for a lot of reasons, like, isn't that the most revered? Isn't that what the Nazi scientists were really trying to study, was heterochromia? I have a lot of questions around it, but do you want to just give us a little bit of a background into why it might be a little bit hidden and not a lot of people know about heterochromia, and why that might actually be the most sought after eye color to study?
It's really fascinating, isn't it, how obsessed the Nazis were with eye color? Because again, when I was growing up and I was being abused, the children that were like the elite were the red-haired, blue-eyed for abuse, but the ones that were being psychically trained were the ones that supposedly had hazel eyes like me. But hazel eyes is not hazel if you've got a different ring of color around the pupil than the rest of the iris. That's called central heterochromia. And as you mentioned, Summer has full heterochromia, where each eye is actually a different color to the other, which is actually extremely rare. This is a really rare eye color. So for central heterochromia, it's 1% of 1% of the world's population. And of that, only 30% are boys, much more common in females. So you've got 1 in 200 Caucasians have this. So when you then look at Hollywood, Kate Bosworth's one great example, you've got so many people who have either got full or central heterochromia or partial heterochromia, segmented heterochromia. So there's obviously an obsession with this. Yes, the Nazis had an obsession with the Aryan race, but in the background, they were experimenting on Romanian gypsies with heterochromia because they knew they had psychic ability. So if you look at Hinduism and some of the other ancient cultures, they were absolutely fascinated with heterochromia, because in those belief systems, individuals with those eye colours had the ability to see God, to see otherworldly entities, to, now I know, see ley lines. I mean, most of the course members that I've taught who have central or full heterochromia can see them very easily. It doesn't mean that those who don't have it can't see them. A lot of them can. It's across the board, those with heterochromia can. They can see the future. So those sorts of things, it's what's, people with this eye colour can do. I really balk at the idea of it being considered an elitist thing. I definitely don't think it is. There's a lot of people who are psychic and have a lot of gifts that don't have this eye colour. What's fascinating is that the Nazis were experimenting on it, and you see it all through Hollywood. It's such a rare eye colour. Why are there so many? Because these bloodline families, and I'm from a bloodline family, they revere this trait, they breed for purpose, and then that's the other thing. You can be very dissociative. If you traumatize a child with heterochromia, they dissociate much more easily. Now, I have to give credit to my distant cousin, Doug McIntyre, taught me most of this. So I get a lot more airplay than he does. So I talk about it, and he's a darling, and he shares his research with me. So he needs credit for this as well, big time. It's just an uncanny thing. So it's as plain as the eyes on your face. So this is why I have grave concern for, school photos. You get school photos. Every child goes off to some bloody school photo place and has their photo taken through, and everybody thinks it's sweet, but parents can take their own photos of their children. They don't need to go off and get the school to do it. And that then goes into some sort of database, and they can see your eyes, and they can see who's got abilities. And then you look at the statistics of those with heterochromia, for instance, that go into the Gifts and Talents program. So a lot of people who went into Gift and Talents programs were MK Ultra slaves, or they were then, pinpointed if they had a high IQ, or they came from a particular bloodline family, they'd go into those programs for study. So there's a lot of study going on, and the populace isn't 100% aware. A lot of parents would be so overjoyed, oh, my child's been singled out, my child's so clever, my child's so special, not realising that this is actually very dangerous. So, and you've got to be, when you've got small groups like that in a classroom that, there's not a lot of other kids in the class, you don't know what's going on in that classroom. These are things that sort of people need to think about. But yeah, when you've got things like heterochromia, it's as plain as the eyes on your face that you have some sort of abilities or latent abilities, or you can be traumatized to the point of dissociation, and so you can abuse a child and they won't remember.
It's interesting that school photos could be like the actual, what do you call it? Like the honeypot for finding and then to bring, because we know that there's a lot of the gateways into the underworld. And it's interesting that just something as quote unquote innocent as school photos could be like the starting or the leading point to a lot of these funnels to get, kids into the types of things that you experience. But I'm just wondering, because you mentioned bloodlines, like I know that there's a lot of satanic influence into the heterochromia, kids with heterochromia, but I'm just unsure as to whether it's the satanic bloodlines that experiment with kids with that, or if the eye color comes. So for example, do blue eyes, brown eyes, hazel eyes, and heterochromia, does each one indicate a certain lineage, whether it's like this one goes back to say, because you said red hair and blue eyes, so that would be like Scottish kind of like Druid kind of stuff or whatever, or Aryan or whatever. Does the eye color indicate that? And then why are there like people believe brown eyes have been here the longest, for example, and blue eyes are more recent, and then all that sort of stuff. Is there anything that you've got to add to all of that?
Well, I did read, and I'm not a genealogist, but I did read that the blue-eyed factor is like you said, it's not something that's been here as long. So it could be some sort of introduction. So then we're talking about, hybridization of some sort, at some point, which is a really interesting thing to go into. And then you talk about all the other species that are here that apparently aren't here, that, many people have had experiences with. Even the Hopi Indians had, experiences with reptilian entities. So we're going back a long way before people started talking about it recently. I would say it probably does have a big factor, the different eye colours. And again, obviously if anything the Nazis were fascinated with is really important to know about. So again, I talk about this in just about every interview lately, because I found out about a year to 2 years ago that they were using fluoride in the Nazi concentration camps to dumb the people down and to prevent them from being able to use their psychic ability. So, for various reasons. So I'm sure they weren't doing that with the Romanian gypsies that they were experimenting on with their eye colour. But for the general populace, they were doing that because it makes them docile, and it calcifies the pineal gland, so you can't get that information through from spirit guides. Those who might have had a communication with God beforehand, who are highly spiritual, wouldn't have had that anymore, and now they just put it in the water everywhere. It's in every toothpaste. If you put fluoride toothpaste with a biscuit batter and feed it to a rat, the rat will die. So, fluoride's really dangerous. It's a neurotoxin. So, yeah, that's my rant. Every time I get into an interview, I have a rant about fluoride.
if it only reaches one extra person each time, I think it's worth it, because I think a lot of people are aware of fluoride, but there's still some people that are probably like, oh, never really, never thought of that.
And little kids, you pressure little kids to brush their teeth, and they just swallow it. They don't spit it out.
Yeah.
Little ones don't spit it out. Gosh.
No. But you don't even have to swallow it. I mean, that's such a porous area. So, like, in energetic medicines and things, you only put stuff under the tongue, and it absorbs straight into the body. Like, it's very close to the bloodstream, and then energetically it's straight in. You got microcosmic orbit in here. So it's like, even if you're just brushing for a minute and you don't swallow it, you're still getting a whole bunch in there. It's pretty ridiculous. But what was I was just gonna ask quickly about, this wasn't in my notes, but so I've heard you talk about, how if you've got mirrors in like a child's bedroom, it's almost like child abuse, like, not to make parents feel guilty and stuff, but it's like, we know that mirrors are used for many purposes like that, like as a looking glass, or as a way to enter into a space for remote viewing, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's definitely not a good idea to have them, especially in your sleeping environment. In Feng Shui, they don't even like having screens, like anything black, like a black screen without being covered, for example. But when we're talking about, because that was in my notes, how like Hollywood cast a lot of actors with heterochromia, and I'm kind of thinking, is it because of their abilities, or is there something in the capturing of the essence of somebody who's like embodying something that's not them, that can somehow come through the lens? It's captured, it's broadcast. Do you think there might be something in that? This only just came to me while we're talking. I'm like, I wonder if there's something in that, where the medium of film and the way that it's captured and broadcast, is there something in the heterochromia aspect specifically that there is something that they know that has an effect on either reaching, like similar to like a looking glass effect. Like if you traumatize somebody with heterochromia, then you glorify them and put them in front of a screen. You capture it with a camera, and a lot of cultures that are, not dumbed down, they don't let you take photos, because there's part of the essence that is imprinted that nobody wants captured. So like certain indigenous tribes don't let you take photographs at all, for example. So you get somebody with heterochromia, you traumatize them, you glorify them, then you capture that, and then you broadcast that. Is there something in there, do you think, that could actually be part of a bigger spell or plan?
100%. That's and I don't think I've already made this correlation until you asked me that question. So thank you very much for a very intelligent question. I'm not surprised coming from you. So what happens with people with central and full heterochromia is they're very dissociative. So when you've got children that are bred for purpose in these bloodline families, and then they are made into actors and actresses, what happens with the dissociation is, when you totally dissociate a child, another entity can take over. It's not always, so you'll have an alter, but that alter may be affiliated with a demonic entity. The demonic entity then takes over when that person starts to take on a role, pretend to be someone that they're not. And this is the bizarre thing about actors and actresses, is that we revere them, supposedly, and they're liars, because they're pretending to be something that they are absolutely not. And so what you then have is a demon that presents on screen, people adore, people focus their energy, and they speak the name of that character, which takes the energy towards the demon. And a lot of the characters are closely named to what the demon's name would be. It's very powerful, the spell casting that they do, that they use specific names. They've mentioned their names. So for those, that get written into the history books, they get energy every time somebody reads or says their name. And this is why fame is something that people, attempt to do. If you're in the occult sciences, you'll understand that it gives energy, whether you're on this earth plane or not. They get energy from it. So that's what would be going on. Also, it would be a big joke on all of us who go along, pay money to go and watch these entities parading around. And these are the ones stealing the loose energy, quite literally. Yeah, so great question.
I might just quickly move on to another question. This is only a relatively quick question, but it leads into looshing because I talk about looshing a lot. Like when people have gone to these huge rallies and stuff, I'm like, these are just loosh events. Like it's to grab that energy and use it against you. But this was actually partly Summer was interested in this because of you've spoken to both of us and you know a bit about what she's like. We kind of were interested because around here in the Byron area, it's really it's a big thing where a lot of the women are getting into these sisterhood circles, and there's a lot of they're all into like the spirituality and et cetera, et cetera. So it's really a question of for you personally, this, if you're okay answering a bit more of a personal question, do you find that you have many women friends? Because what we've noticed is that the ones that are genuinely more sensitive and have more gifts tend to be, it's harder to have female friends, and they can't be around anything that's very inauthentically fake and kind of gross. And then there are a lot of those ones that profess to have like, I'm like this goddess embodiment, or I am very cyclically gifted, or I am whatever. They're saying they have it. And then they're running all these sisterhood circles, and the ones that like are really like lost and disassociated are really like searching for these kinds of sisterhood circles and women's circles and all that kind of thing. And I'm not saying trying to draw a conclusion, because I know that my experiences is small and isolated based on the area that I'm in. But that's just something that I've noticed over the years, because I've had several, I've just known a lot of people in this area. And then Summer kind of like has had similar experiences. So I'm just wondering, like, as somebody who has genuine gifts and abilities, do you find that it's somewhat, I don't know if hard is the right word, but just it's rarer to have close female friendships, or that you'd want to be around these sisterhood or women's circles?
So I'm not part of any women's circles. And, my grandmother was the head of the Eastern Star sect, which is the female version of Freemasonry. I don't do well in groups of any kind, quite frankly. Yeah. I avoid, I don't go to parties because it's too triggering. It's like, because I was taken to so many parties as a child. So I'm an unusual person to ask this, because I don't trust many people, and not very many people get into my inner circle. Having said that, I have a very small group of very, very close friends, but we're all over the world. So we don't even get together to be in a circle. And some of my closest friends are male as well. So it's a bit of both. With those sorts of situations, my suggestion to those people who are seeking out those individuals, if you see ego, if that person who's at the head of that circle, and there should not be anybody who's at the head of the circle, there might be an organizer, but there shouldn't ever be one person that's like the person that everybody's revering or adoring. If you see them elevating themselves above everybody else, that's a sign of ego. And it's usually the people, like you said, the ones that look for that are usually lost. But the individuals who put themselves at the center of those circles are usually very lost too, because they don't have the self-love that they need. They're looking for it externally. And, but again, it's a lesson. So these women who are attracted to that sort of energy might need the lesson of realizing that person hasn't got all the answers. I still have to find the answers within me. And these circles tend to get quite bitchy. If it's not genuinely put together and it's about the ego of the individual, it'll fall apart pretty quickly. They don't tend to last.
And let's just say that because for me, and I don't know if it's just, I can't really say that this is a generic thing, because I'm a man, not a woman, and I'm a particular type of man. Like I hang out by myself. I'm not fond of groups and things like that. But I find that if I did go and watch a movie, for example, I wouldn't be louche because I have the self-awareness. If I do go to a concert or a sporting, I find I've got my own level of like, I'm okay. So let's say even with having a mirror in a house, if people are freaking out, they're like, what? It does what? Like, what's going on? Or what's looshing and where does it go? Like, I guess, I know you probably covered this in your courses, which we can get into a bit later, but for example, is there anything just that's quick and off the cuff that you could maybe share with people where you can protect yourself from looshing? Like, where does people often wonder where does it go? Does it go to the individual? Does it go to what's running the individual? Does it go to the Freemasons like headquarters? Does it go to like Satan? Like, where does the loosh energy go? That's what people often wonder. And then how can we just, in a simple sense, prevent ourselves being looshed, even if we do need to be in an environment like that? Because I know a lot of people, they get disempowered and they just go, I'm never going to anything like that again. But I think that's like, you don't need to do that, because you can actually just hold on to that yourself. So anything that you want to speak to on that?
So when in these arenas and things, so you go to a sporting event, it's the entity or entities that the arena is built for. So there would have been some sort of black magic ritual in the creation of the space. It's usually in a crossing of ley lines. So most arenas are in really large portal spaces where a lot of ley lines cross. So that's where the loosh energy would go to, whichever particular demon. And that would have been set up by Freemasons, just like every church is sighted on a ley by a Freemason with a sighting rod. You know, these are visual terms. Arenas are the same, abattoirs, all churches, courts, those sorts of things are all placed in those particular crossing of leys. With mirrors, if you can see into it and see a reflection, something on the other side can also look in. So again, like you said before, and I've said many times, it's best not to have mirrors in bedrooms. It's just not safe, particularly with little children, because little children are innocent. The veil hasn't descended on them yet. They can usually see these entities, and so they get attacked, because it's pointless for an entity to attack someone who can't see them. So these entities will attack psychics and children because they can see them, because when you have a fear response, any kind of negative emotion can actually make the outer aspect of the aura, there's like a skin around the outer aspect of the aura that can become permeated, and that's where they get their little fingers of energy in and they suck it out. So you just don't want to have those sorts of looking glasses ability for those entities to observe us in a space when you're vulnerable, when you're sleeping. You'll often see mirrors in wet areas as well, wet areas in the house, kitchens and bathrooms, those sorts of places. Because of the water and the ionic energy that's expressed, that is a manifestation tool that becomes like a form of loosh energy too, that they can use to create a manifestation. So my suggestion is to not spend lots and lots of time in bathrooms either. You have to in the kitchen, obviously, but you will get more manifestations in those sorts of areas, just like you'll get more downloads if you're in the shower or doing the dishes or watering the garden. Those sorts of things will happen. As far as protecting your energy, the greatest tool that we have to protect ourselves from otherworldly entities is our intent to be protected. And if we're very fearful, it doesn't work very well. So knowing that your intent is really powerful and being confident will get rid of these things. They just won't be able to get at you. And having some sort of visualization technique. So for me, I imagine a bubble around my entire aura that they just can't get into. Some people like to use that as a mirrored surface so that it bounces off whatever energy is trying to get in. That's another way to do it. I don't use that. I use white light energy or gold frequency to push anything out. And if it tries to get in, it gets a shock. So that's my intent, that anything that tries to oppose me will benefit me. I've been doing that for a while. It's pretty well. Yeah, so that's a really good intent to have. Yeah, and cool. Send negative intentions back to the intender kindly, because it's if you send it back with anger and frustration, you're creating a cord. If you just say, I kindly return to sender any negative intentions, it bounces back. Beautiful soul called Murphy taught me that, and it was great advice.
Yeah, see, because I do a lot in the natural law kind of world, and then there's a principle in the Bible which is take what they give you, fill it twice, and give it back. So it's like, wow. So for example, if somebody from like the council or government or anything like that sends you an offer, which is a commercial offer, like we call it fines, but what you can do is if it's like nefarious in nature or it's like, vexatious or anything like that, what you can actually do is like, first of all, you can just send it back. But the other thing you can do is send it back with a bill. So you kind of like, it's coming, but you're sending it back, and you're punishing them as a result. And interestingly, like I use mirror analogies a lot in natural law too, because one's the world of substance and one's the world of fiction. So one mirrors the other, and one's like real and one's not. So, but you just got to discern the difference between the two. But what's interesting too is like, I want to talk about ley lines now because like we were in Paris recently, me and Summer, for the Olympics, and people were like, don't go there. It's like a huge luge event and that. And I'm like, yeah, but the thing is that like mirrors, for example, or any kind of portal, it's not one way. It goes both ways. So when you become aware and you're not scared, because you just mentioned fear, which is a huge thing, like that's, I always find if somebody gets, for example, you know, they're occupied by an entity or something, it's because it happened during a moment of they forgot who they were. They fell into fear. They weakened themselves because of the choices that they make through drugs, alcohol, poor lifestyle choices, whatever. But it's in a low state, which allows that, because our natural state, I believe, is higher. Like if you're really strong in yourself, nothing can permeate that or take you over. It's only when you've got into a low state, and fear is one of the lowest states. And so what I noticed is like through my experiences of this, I'm like, okay, well, learning about these principles, I'm like, okay, so it's not just one way. And if I don't have to worry about it, that's one level, but I can actually go one further, which is anything that tries, I can loosh it my way. Like looshing isn't like, oh, we lose our energy, we're the battery for the system. It's like, whoa, wait, we can actually extract energy from the system or entities, and it makes us stronger. And as long as it's for a benevolent thing and not like, I'll just increase my ego power to destroy that kind of thing. And I found it's super interesting because if like the stadiums, for example, they're on lays and where lays intersect. And I've found that I've been going around to places where I'm like, okay, so this is a place of great potential, because a lot of people describe it as like evil, like this is where they harvest stuff. And I'm like, no, it's potential. So I can go there and I can do my work, and I'm adding like a high potential to it, or even extracting negative energy to turn over into positive energy myself. Like I see it as the way I've heard you describe a lot of the ways that lays work is it's almost like they're hallways with a lot of doors coming off. I've heard you use that analogy a few times. And that these are like meridians on the earth, like we have meridians in the body. So I'm like, all right, well, what if then I can be like a human acupuncture needle, and I can put myself in these points of high energetics, like I would, like here's your stomach, here's your spleen, and here's your whatever. And then I can be, if I'm like an acupuncture needle, I can like harmonize something to the point where I can either change it and harmonize a disharmonic, or I can actually tonify myself or something around me, the environment. Because that's like what acupuncture is. You can deplete if you do it like with negative intent, or you can tonify a meridian or an energy system. So before I ask more questions, sorry, I just talked for a bit. Do you want to just talk a little bit? Do you want to add anything to that before I ask questions about lays and things and where you're at currently?
And that just gets me so excited, because this is what we need. We need intrepid individuals like yourself, who are strong enough, who have the frequency acumen to go out into these spaces and not be afraid of them, and to harmonize and balance out these negative frequencies with your beautiful frequency that you bring in. And we can channel source energy, whatever we need to do the balancing work. And this is why I'm so passionate about this, because I saw terrible things done in the crossing of lays in portal spaces as a child. And I really feel not a responsibility as such, but because I know about it, and because I can now show people how easy it is to see these ley lines and see and find the crossing points. They're really easy to find. We can go out there and we can actually harmonize. So again, exactly, that they're not evil spaces just because they make these arenas look like a massive single eye, because that's part of their religion. We can change that. There's so many more of us than there are of them. We're so much more powerful than they are. And this is the thing. Light souls, people who are altruistic, souls who are altruistic are infinite. We don't end. Dark souls have a finite existence, because if they go into a hellish realm where they belong, if we can actually get them off the earth plane, and we'll be doing that pretty soon, they go into a hellish realm, they'll be predated on by other darker, more powerful beings. That doesn't happen to us when we go into the light realm. So, I mean, I do feel sorry for these idiots that sell their soul and become dark, because can you imagine how depressing that would be? There would be real there'd be nothing in life that would be of joy anymore, because they know where they're going. They know it's finite. At the end of this lifetime, they're either going to be a lost soul wandering around the earth trying to steal energy off people, or they're going to hell. What a horrible existence. So,
I
and
know.
this is the thing that, these poor people in Hollywood that are bred for purpose, and they're so dissociated, and they've probably been compromised in the worst possible ways. They're not happy, and people are revering them and wanting to be like them. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's something people have got to stop, right? Is revering, because even
Yes.
from a spiritual sense, we're not supposed to worship other men. We're only supposed to worship, like, if we do worship at all. Like, there's a whole other argument there, but I just mean in context, you're only supposed to give that praise to, like, like what made you, not like other men. It's a mistake to make. But then to revere like actors and stuff and celebrities is really bad, because, like you said, not only have they given away part of their divinity, as a result they're kind of vacuous. It's kind of like it has to be filled by other stuff. And so when millions of people are doing that, they're actually feeding into that darker cycle and losing some of their, if you want to call it light or whatever, their divinity.
Yes.
They're actually losing some of that in the process. So it's really important, like, not to do that, because that's what we're tricked into doing. It's like, from a natural law perspective, it's only an offer. You don't have to form that agreement. It can be something totally different than that. It can be reversed the other way. But but just in the beginning, I think it's first of all, as an expression that I like, that comparison is the thief of joy. And a lot of people think that I don't have millions of dollars, I don't have lots of followers, or people don't notice me when I walk down the street. And it's like, well, that's not, like, that could be a good thing.
Yeah.
Just for
Oh,
starters.
100%. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
For
then just
sure.
this reverence is like, this reverence is not a healthy thing. For a lot of reasons, not just from for like darker reasons, not just like, well, I want to feel good about myself, so I don't want to compare myself to a supermodel. Like, that's the surface level of it, but there's a lot of dark stuff. So I just think, if I like to impart that message, just like, stop revering other human beings, because it just doesn't go well for them or for you. Like, it's a negative cycle.
Don't worship anyone or anything. Worship is why we're in the situation that we're in at the moment, because of these idiots worshipping these dark entities, because it gives them power in one finite lifetime. It's just ridiculous. And I don't think Jesus Christ wanted to be worshipped either. And I sure as hell don't think he wanted to be represented as a corpse in every church on a frigging cross. I mean, that is the biggest sign of someone. Don't you whistle blow, this is what will happen to you. Why? I mean, oh my gosh. So worship is something that avoid at all costs, and don't revere these poor people in these famous situations, because you're aspiring to slavery, the worst kind. You see so many. Rihanna's complained about it. Eminem, all of these, slaves complain about they have no power and they have no access to their own money, and all they do is work.
Mm.
Poor thing. And I'm not advocating for these people, but when these souls get, and I was used as a honeypot to compromise people, and I still feel bad about that, because some of them were innocent. When people are compromised, they will sell their soul, because they get cornered, and then they use them as tools. It's just horrible.
So if we just go back to the ley lines for a sec, with you use the analogy of the hallway with doors coming off, which they lead to different dimensions. And so the way because I've had several visions over the years of, like, I see there's nodes connected by tubes. So when I heard you describe that, I'm like, oh, that's really similar to how I've seen things happen. It's kind of how I've contextualized how we get premonitions, or like, I might be thinking of you and then like an email shows up or something. It's kind of like we're connecting these nodes via these tubes, and we're tapping into these different frameworks that are there, like, concurrently. And it's like, we're all connected. And it's like, science would call it like quantum entanglement. The fictional version of that I would call the World Wide Web, where everything's connected via motives. Like, all these things, like, it's there in plain sight, right? But then when we take this to, so I just wanted to show you this, because I drew this, I think, like 2.5 years ago. I call it remembering. It's basically,
Oh wow.
so it's just trying to show, like, that down the bottom is the mycelial network. You got the guy above with his energy centers and how it connects to those grids above. Because I started seeing those when I was a kid. I was like, there's grids in the
Wow.
sky. And
Oh wow.
and then how like the sun. Anyway, there's a lot of meaning in that. But I started seeing it, and then like later in life when you start to see the chemtrails and that. And I heard you when you talked to, I think it was the Alpha Vedic podcast you did with Mike Winner and Bear, and Mike mentioned something about the sky and something twigged in you, and I was like, I just remembered I've got to talk to you about that because I saw those grids when I was young, but we didn't have the spray, the striated sprays in the sky. And when I started seeing it over the last, several years of how the sky looks with the striations, well, first of all, the grid patterns, but then you get those ones that are really closely striated together, like it's an EMF pattern. And I was like, all that looks to me, that just looks disharmonic. And the only reason it's disharmonic, I believe, is not because it's being sprayed, but because human beings in general have we've become disharmonic. So therefore we see as a expression or representation of that, we see that because we're not occupying these grids which we're meant to occupy as our energy expands, we've kind of like either forgotten or we've just become enraptured with fear or doubt or something else because of what we're told about the world. Like how many more people are now aware of the satanic underworld and the rituals and things in the last even 4 years? That doesn't make people feel good. And because they're not growing beyond that, it's like you start to see more of this stuff permeating these other upper grids. So I remember saying to people a while ago, I'm like, you just have to harmonize that, right? Like if you harmonize yourself and you work with it, you actually see some of that stuff disappear out of the sky. And then it got me into more of the like things like, I think if you just sing into the ground, like how like our indigenous culture play didgeridoos, and those specifically open up things in the ground, and other people use voice. And then I heard you're talking about singing into ley lines. I'm like, holy shit, Rachel's talking about the same sort of stuff. So I wanted to open this discussion up because I know you're a big advocate of bringing, like, that's the Lay Love Down project. And because me and Summer go and do that too, and we'll sing, but because I'm not a singer, I tone. And the tones that I use are vowels. So I'll do it in quite a deep, like Summer describes it as like an ancestral kind of it's not like singing, it's just tones and it's deep, but I go through the vowels in one breath. And then, so I just wanted to ask you if you know that there's I didn't learn it. I just kind of figured this is what I felt to do was I start with R, E, U, E, R, and I do that in a continuous toning. And I wanted to ask you what your thoughts or perspective are on, especially for men, because women will just like fairly easily go out and be like, I'm like a fairy, I'm dancing, I'm joyful, and I'm singing. But guys are like, I think that's kind of gay if I go out and sing at the ground or into a ley line or at the clouds or something or the water.
Yeah.
So I just, you know what I mean? Like I know I'm kind of sounding like, but it's true. And I just wonder if you can make a distinction between the masculine and the feminine in the Lay Love Down side of things. And if we can encourage more men to do this as well, I see men as the protectors of the realm as well. And if we all remembered who we are, we've got a lot more protection in these grids that allow women to flourish their magic into it and things as well. Can you talk a little bit about that, the masculine side of it, for those that are wondering?
Well, we had Trevor Y on, the Lay Love Down. He taught a masterclass for us. And one of the things he mentioned was the sticks. You're tapping the sticks. That brings a beautiful frequency in. The main thing is the intent. You can go out in a ley line and be completely silent. But if your intent is to harmonize and balance, you will harmonize and balance. I've seen people putting pans of water out to get rid of the vinegar, pans of vinegar out to get rid of the chemtrails. And I asked a friend of mine who's very, very knowledgeable on this subject, I said, is it about the intent of the individual or is it about the vinegar? And he said, it's both. So if your intent, that this is how powerful human beings are, if your intent is that vinegar in a pan is going to disseminate the chemtrails, it'll work. It's called alchemy. We are so powerful. So if a man wants to go out into a ley line and create a tone, the vowels are so powerful. So what you said, you do the vowels. When you sing, it's the vowels that carry the note, not the consonants. So you've chosen the group of sounds that carry the best, that carry the sound the most harmoniously. So thank you for doing that. So that's a beautiful way to do it. Gregorian chants, that's incredibly powerful. You've got Tibetan monks that do incredible throat singing and stuff. That's all powerful masculine things that people can do. I really recommend going out with tuning forks for one, because it's so easy if you're not a musician. But if those who can play musical instruments, go out and do that. I would make sure if it's a drum kit, that's going to be hard to take out. But you don't want it to be too loud and too angry or frustrated. You want it to be something that's got a harmonic beat to it that's pleasant and joyful. Same with guitar. I recommend playing major chords. Any musical instrument, by the way, just because minor chords tend to be quite sort of sad and can be a little bit, of a downer. But having said that, Murphy, again, that I mentioned earlier, she taught us how to sing the Maori water song, it's all minor chords, and it's so beautiful. It's so hard. So that's, minor chords aren't necessarily a bad thing. When you've got ancient songs like that have all the right kind of intent, that is incredibly powerful. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be singing. It can be jumping on the earth. It can be tapping the foot on the earth with the intent of harmonization. Didgeridoos obviously are incredibly powerful. So there's a whole gamut. Some people like to dance. I know you said, this is a masculine thing, but, men might want to go out there and do their Tai Chi or something along those lines of martial art. If it's about moving the body in a fluid way with the intent of harmonizing again the ley lines. And this is, this is a bit out there and woo-woo, and again, talking about the fairies, but there are entities within the leys that try to point these things out to us because they are so significant and they want us to pay attention. So they'll present humanoid features in the landscape, in the trees, in the plants. Ancient people have known this for millennia. We call it pareidolia because psychology wants to make a pathology of anything that's spiritual. It's so powerful to go out and you see this face in this area, and then, oh my gosh, you're standing in a ley line. You can see that perfect circle, which again is a corridor. And you described it as, what were you saying before? You used the perfect word.
The grids.
Grids and
tubes.
Tubes.
The tubes,
It's a tube. It's a tube of energy. Exactly that. Precisely that. So when you're standing in the cross section, you can see a perfect circle in nature. I've been so lucky with the people that I've worked with and taught this course to, because they freely will go out. They'll find these things. You don't find them everywhere. Sometimes it can take a while to find one. And then they share the pictures with me, and they're sweet enough to say you can share that. And I'll be sharing some of those images for Living Free in a week or so. There's a whole community of people now going out into leys all across the world, singing into them and sitting, little clips of them singing into the leys or playing music or whatever, that can see them now. They're finding them. They're taking photographs of the so-called pareidolia images of these entities that want us to pay attention to the ley lines. So it's growing quickly, which is something that I'm so incredibly happy about, because the more people who recognise it and see it, the more powerful the movement will become, because then everybody, all we need is a critical mass of people going out into the leys with the intent of balancing. We're doing mass meditations now as well, so you don't necessarily have to be able to go out and find one if that's not your thing. Some people are, housebound or whatever, but you can do a meditation. You can focus your energy. You don't have to do one with Lay Love Down. You can do your own meditations to focus the energy. Pull down light from source into the leys. That's what I do on a regular basis, so that we're flooding the leys with this beautiful, beautiful light frequency. And for those who are not aware yet, we have CRY2 cryptochromes. It's a kind of magnetosensor. Ley lines are a magnetic frequency, heavily expressed in the human retina, just like insects and birds who navigate using ley lines. So that is a scientific fact. There's a National Library of Medicine article on it. If you look up cryptochromes. There's been academic trolling of people who've talked about this, which proves to me that, the secret societies don't want the average person to know. They just do not want them to know, which means I'm going to talk about it that much more.
Yeah, I thought when I came across you talking about this project, I thought this is like a lot of people want to know about solutions, and then it ranges from everything for like, how do we tell the government to go and go jump? Who can we get fired? Who can we write notices to? And I'm like, well, that all has an effect, but I haven't been into that for a long time, because I was like, you're only still really feeding into and acknowledging the power. Like if you're trying to notice somebody about the power they have, you're kind of acknowledging the power that they have, or giving them the power that they don't have, I should say. And I've always just been about So one of the, I have a clip that I share every year on social media because I did it at a talk. I was explaining how somebody came up to me after the floods here. We got flooded out 2-3 years ago, and it was a very well engineered flood. And they said to me, we're on the beach, and they said, "Oh, what do you think is going to happen next?" It's kind of like eerie, right? Like a calm before the storm. What do you think they're going to do next? And I just said, like, I don't think what they're going to do next. I just think what I'm doing next. Like, I'm not invested. I'm not paying attention. I'm not empowering their stuff. I'm like, the reason people, I believe, are so interested in that is because they haven't found themselves yet. They haven't found their value, their energy, what they're meant to do with it. So as a default mechanism, rather than focus on and build that, they're like, how do we bring this down? And I'm like, you don't bring it down. You build yourself up. And as a default mechanism, that just falls away. If you try to bring it down, you're only going to feed it. So when I came across you with this project, I'm like, I love this because this is about, you don't have to know who's the head of the Rothschilds, and you don't have to know like who's doing what to who. You don't have to know how many of the Hollywood elite are Satanists. You don't have to know any of that. In fact, the less you know of it, probably the better. You just have to get into your power. And so you do that on a daily basis with what you feed yourself, not just food wise, but the information you bring in every day, what your intentions are, what you want to build for yourself, and how you ground that is really, really important. Because over the years, I keep seeing like things with the skies or like whatever. And I'm like, that's just showing that people are forgetting who they are. They're becoming disharmonic. Like, you want to see, if you see more corruption in society, more than likely what you're seeing is just a symptom. Like if you see, overgrowth of stuff on your skin or on your body, it's like, that's not the problem. The problem is you're out of balance. And then as a mechanism designed by nature, because you're not balanced, you got all these fungus and bacteria and parasites and whatever, but they're not the issue, you're the issue. So if we keep seeing that in society, it's like, well, we're just out of balance. We're just forgetting who we are. We're not putting enough good energy into the earth and the resonant grids and stuff. All you need to do is just do more of that, which is exactly what this is about, right? So like, even if, like you said, you're housebound, you can still do it. There's no excuse. Like no one does not have the ability to do that, which I love. There's nothing hidden, you know what I mean? It's not like, well, you have to be this good to be able to do it. Or, Rachel can do it, but you can't because you're not that good at stuff. It's like everybody can, so there's no excuse. I just love it. It's something. Do you want me to just share that actually? I'll bring that up now because
that'll be cool.
we'll just go to this one. So this is the Lay Love Down project. So let's just see here. So basically, I've only seen Ben on a couple of interviews and on Instagram. You got the Instagram one going as well, but this is the project. You've got a couple of messages there on YouTube, which people can see, and there's this song as well. So you mentioned before that you don't have to do a specific one, but a collective resonance and a collective frequency can be really powerful, right? So if you've got a lot of people tuning into the same frequency, it's just measured higher, which I think is cool. Do you want to talk a little bit about this?
I have a singing coach, and she explained to me, hello Charlotte, if you're listening, that when people sing together, their heartbeats actually in sync. So as you're harmonizing, your heartbeats are beating at the same time, which if you're out in a ley line, that's a harmonic. That's so powerful. It's not just about your voice, it's about your heartbeats harmonizing. So this is why, ceremony and community, corroborees and those sorts of things are so powerful. And this is probably why, we see original people will stomp their feet, because it's the beat, it's bringing that harmony, that frequency in with the intent. I asked Ben, the reason why Lay Love Down came about was I did an interview with Ben on his Wake Up podcast, and we ended up talking about, ley lines and how important they are and how we have to harmonize, balance out the frequencies. And then I asked him for a song, and then it just happened from there, because he's an amazing vocalist. He's got music out there that he's produced, which is The Law Merchant's a fantastic song. Look that up. So, I mean, it's just happened organically, and that's what I love so much about it. It wasn't something I thought, we've got to do this. I was teaching in my course people, suggesting if you find a ley line, maybe you might want to go out and sing some beautiful frequencies into it to bring up the harmonies and to bring the, the balance in. But this is just, Ben's amazing. He's just hit the ground running. Cherie has been redoing the website for us as well, which is why it looks so snazzy now. We've got these volunteers that are working with us. I just feel so incredibly grateful for the amazing people who've been coming in. The mass meditations have had good numbers. We've got another one coming up on the 11th of September if people want to join the mass meditation then. And on the 17th, we've got a protocols meeting where we've actually got a setting of intent that people can say before they go out into the ley lines, so that they're protected, the earth is protected, the ley lines are protected, and the whole intent is set up for you. It's something very brief and easy to say, and then they can go out and do the work. So we'll be doing that on the 17th of September as well.
Awesome.
And if people
That'll be
want to
very
register,
powerful.
just go to my socials, because I've got those advertised recently in my feeds. So I'm on Instagram, Twitter under Weasel, @Weasel quadruple 8. Under my name on Telegram. Be careful of the impersonators on Telegram. I don't do PMs and I don't sell bloody crypto. And I'm also on Facebook under my name. Yeah, so I've shared that recently. Yeah, so people can register.
Yeah. I'm going to put all of your links under this as well. Just want to quickly show this one too, because I spoke here in 2020 when there was the big timeline thing happening, and you're speaking this December. Just want to talk quickly about your talk that's coming up at Cosmic Consciousness.
Yeah, so this is what I was so excited about when we first started speaking in this interview. So I wanted to go in June. I got invited up for December. It just happens to be when the ley lines are harmonizing. There are 2 dragon lines. So dragon lines are the most powerful of the ley lines on the earth. Up until 2012, we had 6 pairs. In 2017, a new one appeared. 2018, another new dragon line appeared. 2019, another new dragon line appeared. So suddenly we've got this influx of incredibly powerful energy. So 2 of these dragon lines cross the Uluru, and that is a massive portal space over that rock. That rock, if you look at it from an aerial point of view, you can see it's almost like a circle of a road around it. That is literally the portal space. And the bigger the portal, the more it goes underground as well. So there's underground aspects of Uluru that are also activated. So that is one big portal opening. So there's every dimension comes off that. So no wonder it's a sacred space. I had no idea when I went up there in year 2000. Got an amazing group of speakers. I just felt that's Doug that I mentioned before, who taught me about the central heterochromia. He's my distant cousin. We only worked out we were cousins a little while ago. This is going to be an most amazing conference. So I'm overjoyed to go. I'll be presenting on ley lines and using relaxed vision to see them, how you can read an aura, those sorts of things. Basically what I teach in my course, but with a focus on leys, obviously, because we're in a portal space while we're talking about it. I'm so excited. Robert Jameson, I've met. He's an absolutely beautiful soul, and Charlotte as well, beautiful soul. So it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it's just a powerful place in general. This is your website as well, so people can reach you here at Six Science. Can you just want to tell people about the courses that you run?
Yeah, sure. So I teach how to see ley lines, what they are, the history behind them, energetic protection. So what we were talking about before, but much more detailed. How to read an aura, what the soul frequency colors in an aura actually mean in the middle aura. Everybody can see the etheric part of the aura, by the way. So everybody will go away knowing that they can see the etheric at least. And with practice, if they can't see it during the course, they'll learn how to see the color in the aura. It's not difficult. I also teach how to find out what your soul purpose for incarnation is. So why you're here, what your purpose is, why you came to Earth at this crazy time. You know, we're very privileged to be here at the moment. It might be a little bit uncomfortable at times, but we are, you know, we're meant to be here. This is a reason. There's a reason to be here. So I teach people, you know, how to work out what they're here to do. And then we have a Q&A session on the last, the 4th session, where they just ask whatever they want and I answer, which is my favorite part.
Nice. Yeah, I know a few people that have done your courses, and everybody has really good things to say about it, from whether it's the ley lines or the psychic abilities. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things that I've had a lot of good feedback from. And you know, I've done readings with you as well, and it's definitely I can highly recommend for sure. So definitely worth checking out. So we'll put these links in the up with the interview as well. Is there anything else that you wanted to just add in before we wrap up the chat?
I'm an eternal optimist, and it can annoy people at times, but I do see that we're coming up to a time where we're not going to be as stressed out as we are now. It'll be interesting between now and the end of the year because we've got this harmony time coming, and I know that the secret societies, they are pretty stressed out because a lot of them are having to leave on an energetic level, or their puppets are having to leave on an energetic level. It's called harmony time for a reason. So we've got some good things to look forward to. Very good things.
I wanted to talk a bit more about, but maybe we'll wait till we do the next interview because you're coming on the platform soon. I can ask about it because I'm just conscious of the time. But I wonder, this is a question for you. Let's say that you are a disharmonic being on this earth, and you know that something's coming into a harmonic time, and there's almost nothing you can do about it, but your predilective is towards disharmony. The analogy that I would give is, I'm a court judge and you're in the court and you're doing really, really well and you're about to get the result that you came for. There's nothing I can do about it. But what I might do I might just throw something at you to see if I can agitate you and get you to say something you shouldn't say. So now you're in contempt of court, or do something that kind of diminishes your standing. Do you think that there's a chance that over the next, we've got like less than half the year, what have we got, like 3 months left, something like that, as it gets closer to this time you're talking about, do you think people might need to be aware that there could be something thrown at them either in the world space or energetically towards them that might, as an offer, want them to choose disharmony, like get angry about something or get fearful about something, to like kind of forget who they are and to then come into a disharmony to try to like somewhat diminish what might be coming in the way you're describing? Do you think that that's a possibility and people should be maybe a bit aware of, just to keep the end in mind and not to be distracted by stuff like that?
Yeah, 100%. And that's a wonderful thing to end on. So that what we're seeing at the moment is a massive tantrum on behalf of those who had control and realize that they have lost control. And so you're going to see some pretty weird stuff. I think it's going to be interesting. What I would suggest to people is just be the observer, because it is an illusion. It's all an illusion. So if you go to quantum physics and you look at the way that, you've got an atom with all this energy buzzing around it, it's not even solid. Everything we see is an illusion. So in that sense, don't get caught up in it. Just let it, just watch it, be bemused by it, knowing that what we're coming into, they can't have control over. So I'm really glad you ended on that, because it's very easy to get caught up in the fear, and that's the only thing they've got to hang on to. That is their food. That is literally what they live on. We don't provide it, they're starved of it. And they'll have to go somewhere else. And they're going to have to go somewhere else by the end of the year anyway.
Nice. I love it. So yeah, just keep the end, like just stay focused, like just keep doing your work, like don't fall into the illusions and that, because they'll pop up here and there. Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for coming on. I really enjoyed. I wanted to kind of pick your brain a bit and have a chat for a little while, so I really appreciate the time. And we'll chat again in a couple of weeks, and then I'm looking forward to seeing some of these photos and things as well. So that was mostly going to be focused on the layers, right?
Yeah.
That chat.
Yeah. Do a like a masterclass and just share a heap of stuff.
Perfect. So yeah, we'll share that one out as well. Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your time, Tom. I appreciate it. Okay. Take care.